The Arabian Nights, or the 1001 Nights. We left the story when Shahrazad, on the first night at the palace, turned to King Shahryar and said, "May I have your permission to tell a story?" He replied, "Yes." And Shahrazad was very happy and said to her sister and the king, "Listen." And so, this was the story of the first night, the story of the merchant and the demon. It is said, O wise and happy king, that once there was a prosperous merchant who had abundant wealth and investments and commitments in every country. He had many women and children and kept many servants and slaves. One day, having resolved to visit another country, he took provisions, filling his saddlebag with loaves of bread and with dates, mounted his horse, and set out on his journey. For many days and nights he journeyed under God's care until he reached his destination. When he finished his business, he turned back to his home and family. He journeyed for 3 days, and on the 4th day, chancing to come to an orchard, went in to avoid the heat and shade himself from the sun of the open country. He came to a spring under a walnut tree and, tying his horse, sat by the spring, pulled out from the saddlebag some loaves of bread and a handful of dates, and began to eat, throwing the date pits right and left till he had had enough. Then he got up, performed his ablutions, and performed his prayers. But hardly had he finished when he saw an old demon with sword in hand, standing with his feet on the ground and his head in the clouds. The demon approached until he stood before him and screamed, saying, "Get up, so that I may kill you with this sword, just as you have killed my son." When the merchant saw and heard the demon, he was terrified and awe-stricken. He asked, "Master, for what crime do you wish to kill me?" The demon replied, "I wish to kill you because you have killed my son." The merchant asked, "Who has killed your son?" The demon replied, "You have killed my son." The merchant said, "By God, I did not kill your son. When and how could that have been?" The demon said, "Didn't you sit down, take out some dates from your saddlebag, and eat, throwing the pits right and left?" The merchant replied, "Yes, I did." The demon said, You killed my son, for as you were throwing the stones right and left, my son happened to be walking by and was struck and killed by one of them, and I must now kill you." The merchant said, "Oh my lord, please don't kill me." The demon replied, "I must kill you as you killed him, blood for blood." The merchant said, "To God we belong and to God we return. There is no power or strength save in God, the Almighty, the Magnificent. If I killed him, I did it by mistake. Please forgive me." The demon replied, "By God, I must kill you as you killed my son." Then he seized him and, throwing him to the ground, raised the sword to strike him. The merchant began to weep and mourn his family and his wife and children. Again, the demon raised his sword to strike, while the merchant cried until he was drenched with tears, saying, "There is no power or strength save in God the Almighty." Then he began to recite the following verses. "Life has 2 days, one peace, one weariness, and has 2 sides, worry and happiness. Ask him who taunts us with adversity, does fate, save those worthy of note, oppress? Don't you see that the blowing, raging storms only the tallest of the trees beset, and of earth's many green and barren lots, only the ones with fruits with stones are hit? And of the countless stars in heaven's vault, none is eclipsed except the moon and sun. You thought well of the days when they were good, oblivious to the ills destined for one. You were deluded by the peaceful nights, yet in the peace of night does sorrow stun." When the merchant finished and stopped weeping, the demon said, "By God, I must kill you as you killed my son, even if you weep blood." The merchant asked, "Must you?" The demon replied, "I must," and raised his sword to strike. But morning overtook Scheherazade, and she lapsed into silence, leaving King Shahryar burning with curiosity to hear the rest of the story. Then Dinarzade said to her sister Shahrazad, "What a strange and lovely story." Shahrazad replied, "What is this compared with what I shall tell you tomorrow night, if the king spares me and lets me live? It will be even better and more entertaining." The king thought to himself, "I will spare her until I hear the rest of the story. Then I will have her put to death the next day." When morning broke, the day dawned, and the sun rose. The king left to attend to the affairs of the kingdom, and the vizier, Shahrazad's father, was amazed and delighted. King Shahryar governed all day and returned home at night to his quarters and got into bed with Shahrazad. Then Dinarzade said to her sister Shahrazad, "Please, sister, if you are not sleepy, tell us one of your lovely little tales to while away the night." The king added, "Let it be the conclusion of the story of the demon and the merchant, for I would like to hear it." Shahrazad replied, "With the greatest pleasure, dear, happy king." And so, this is the story of the second night.
O wise and happy king! When the demon raised his sword, the merchant asked the demon again, "Must you kill me?" And the demon replied, "Yes." Then the merchant said, "Please give me time to say goodbye to my family and my wife and children, to divide my property among them and appoint guardians. Then I shall come back so that you may kill me." The demon replied, "I'm afraid that if I release you and grant you time, you will go and do what you wish but will not come back." The merchant said, "I swear to keep my pledge to come back, as the God of heaven and earth is my witness."
The demon asked, "How much time do you need?" The merchant replied, 1 year, so that I may see enough of my children, bid my wife goodbye, discharge my obligations to people, and come back on New Year's Day." The demon asked, "Do you swear to God that if I let you go, you will come back on New Year's Day?" The merchant replied, "Yes, I swear to God." After the merchant swore, the demon released him, and he mounted his horse sadly and went on his way. He journeyed until he reached his home and came to his wife and children. When he saw them, he wept bitterly, and when his family saw his sorrow and grief, they began to reproach him for his behavior. And his wife said, "Husband, what is the matter with you? Why do you mourn when we are happy, celebrating your return?" He replied, "Why not mourn when I have only 1 year to live?" Then he told her of his encounter with the demon and informed her that he had sworn to return on New Year's Day so that the demon might kill him. When they heard what he said, everyone began to cry. His wife struck her face in lamentation and cut her hair. His daughters wailed, and his little children cried. It was a day of mourning, as all the children gathered around their father to weep and exchange goodbyes. The next day he wrote his will, dividing his property, discharged his obligations to people, left bequests and gifts, distributed alms and engaged reciters to read portions of the holy scripts in his house. Then he summoned legal witnesses and in their presence freed his slaves and slave girls, divided among his elder children their shares of the property, appointed guardians for his little ones, and gave his wife her share, according to her marriage contract. He spent the rest of the time with his family, and when the year came to an end, save for the time needed for the journey, he performed his ablutions, performed his prayers, and, carrying his burial shroud, began to bid his family goodbye. His sons hung around his neck, his daughters wept, and his wife wailed. Their mourning scared him, and he began to weep as he embraced and kissed his children goodbye. He said to them, "Children, this is God's will and decree, for man was created to die." Then he turned away and, mounting his horse, journeyed day and night until he reached the orchard on New Year's Day. He sat at the place where he had eaten the dates, waiting for the demon, with a heavy heart and tearful eyes. As he waited, an old man, leading a deer on a leash, approached and greeted him, and he returned the greeting. The old man inquired, "Friend, why do you sit here in this place of demons and devils? For in this haunted orchard none come to good." The merchant replied by telling him what had happened to him and the demon from beginning to end. The old man was amazed at the merchant's fidelity and said, "Yours is a magnificent pledge," adding, "By God, I shall not leave until I see what will happen to you with the demon." Then he sat down beside him and chatted with him. As they talked, but morning overtook Shahrazad, and she lapsed into silence. As the day dawned and it was light, her sister Dinarzad said, "What a strange and wonderful story." Shahrazad replied, "Tomorrow night I shall tell something even stranger and more wonderful than this." When it was night and Shahrazad was in bed with the king, Dinarzad said to her sister Shahrazad, "Please, if you are not sleepy, tell us one of your lovely little tales to while away the night." The king added, "Let it be the conclusion of the merchant's story." Shahrazad replied, "As you wish." And so, this was the story of the third night.
I heard, O happy king, that as the merchant and the man with the deer sat talking, another old man approached with 2 black hounds, and when he reached them, he greeted them, and they returned his greeting. Then he asked them about themselves, and the man with the deer told him the story of the merchant and the demon, how the merchant had sworn to return on New Year's Day, and how the demon was waiting to kill him.
He added that when he himself heard the story, he swore never to leave until he saw what would happen between the merchant and the demon. When the man with the 2 dogs heard the story, he was amazed, and he too swore never to leave them until he saw what would happen between them. Then he questioned the merchant, and the merchant repeated to him what had happened to him with the demon. While they were engaged in conversation, a third old man approached and greeted them, and they returned his greeting. He asked, "Why do I see the 2 of you sitting here with this merchant between you, looking abject, sad, and dejected?" They told him the merchant's story and explained that they were sitting and waiting to see what would happen to him with the demon. When he heard the story, he sat down with them, saying, "By God, I too, like you, will not leave until I see what happens to this man with the demon." As they sat, chatting with one another, they suddenly saw the dust rising from the open country, and when it cleared, they saw the demon approaching with a drawn steel sword in his hand. He stood before them without greeting them, yanked the merchant with his left hand, and holding him fast, said, "Get ready to die." The merchant and the 3 old men began to weep and wail. But dawn broke and morning overtook Shahrazad, and she lapsed into silence. Then Dinarzad said, "Sister, what a lovely story." Shahrazad replied, "What is this compared with what I shall tell you tomorrow night? It will be even better. It will be more wonderful, delightful, entertaining, and delectable if the king spares me and lets me live." The king was all curiosity to hear the rest of the story, and said to himself, "By God, I will not have her put to death until I hear the rest of the story and find out what happened to the merchant with the demon. Then I will have her put to death the next morning, as I did with the others." Then he went out to attend to the affairs of his kingdom, and when he saw Shahrazad's father, he treated him kindly and showed him favors, and the vizier was amazed. When night came, the king went home, and when he was in bed with Shahrazad, Dinarzad said, "Sister, if you are not sleepy, tell us one of your lovely little tales to while away the night." Shahrazad replied, "With the greatest pleasure." And this will be the story of the 4th night in our next chapter of the Arabian Nights, or the 1001 Nights.